there is a big thunderclap over Canberra tonight. There is breaking news and it involves national security. I'm going to discuss this in greater detail with our panellists, Bronwyn Bishop and with Joe Hildebrand. But the ASIO boss, Mike Burgess, is currently giving a speech in Canberra where he lays out the threat assessment. Now, he's spoken about a potential rise in Islamic terrorism in the country, but I think what's going to dominate the headlines in the next 24 hours is this part, that apparently there was a plot from an Australian politician, a former Australian politician, to act on the behalf of a foreign government, and there was even a plan at one point in time to try to bring a Prime Minister's relative into the orbit of these foreign spies. Now, there is no clue or suggestion in the articles that have come out. We'll obviously try and turn the speech around for you as fast as we can about whether it's China or Russia or North Korea or many other adversarial nations. But I'm going to quote from some of the speech to you now to detail exactly what is going to be the big story for the next 24 hours. And it reads like this. While deciding not to identify the nation behind the A-Team foreign spy unit, Burgess said that members posed as consultants, headhunters, local government officials and researchers while claiming to be from a fictional data company called Data 31. Regarding the former Australian politician who was at the heart of this or believed was co-opted by this group, the politician, according to Burgess, and this is a direct quote, sold out their country, party and former colleagues to advance the interests of a foreign regime. At one point, the former politician even proposed bringing a Prime Minister's family member into the spy's orbit. He goes on in the speech. Fortunately, the plot did not go ahead, but other schemes did. Burgess did not identify the politician who was recruited by the spies or the political party. Now, obviously, the Canberra Columbos will try and work this out, and by that I mean the reporters in the next little while. But again, one of the other issues that was a particular concern for Mike Burgess, and again, I'm just reading from the text of his speech now, is that his concern was that somebody was going to infiltrate things like our telecommunications or our power grid network, and during times of particular stress, previously exampled, big shutdowns like Optus, but there's no suggestion, obviously, that that was connected to this, but an example of those foreign adversaries being able to make the most of technical problems inside telecommunications companies or, on particularly extreme weather days, shutting down the power infrastructure. There's also been an attempt to exchange money for information about national security plans, including, yes, the insides of AUKUS. Again, all of this we are just learning about now, but I wanted to open the show with it because I've got a feeling it's going to be a very big part of the next 24 hours. But let's have a little chat about some of the business that's been going on in Canberra today before this story broke. Now, let's be honest, the Prime Minister would like if the Australian media all treated him like 60 Minutes did just before the election.
It's been a carefully crafted makeover. The dramatic weight loss, new specs, new suits. It's all very, well, Prime Ministerial. You'd almost need glasses to recognise the Albo 2.0.
You look like John Curtin. a wartime Prime Minister.
John Curtin's well-fashioned. If you just hold on to it for long enough, it comes back.
Of course, the reality is that anyone who actually reports on what this government has been doing can see plenty of problems that are there for all to see. They can see the broken promises, they can see the lies, and they can see the giant jumps towards the left. So much so that even left-wing newspapers, well, they publish polls that reflect exactly what you see here on Sky News Primetime each and every night, that the coalition is now in front of Labor on two-party preferred and certainly on the primary vote, and the trust factor around this Prime Minister has gone through the floor. There's also the inevitable reaction that Australians have had to the incompetence of the Prime Minister and his staff when boat people arrive in Western Australia.
I've been travelling in the car, so I haven't been advised about that.
And anyone with a brain can see that the Prime Minister either has completely walked away from, or most likely was lying about his $275 power price drop by 2025. Here he was being questioned on Adelaide radio. We went through this chapter and verse last week, but it's as dodgy as it seems.
So is that why the cheque's not in the mail anymore, the $275?
Well, that occurred right around the world, and we're not immune from that, and that led to global spikes a lot higher.
I know. I guess what I'm trying to ask is,
occurred in Europe.
Factoring all that in, is anyone ever going to get the $275?
Well, what that was modelling on the transition that occurred on the basis that renewables are a cheaper form of new energy.
And because I point this out to you each and every night, because we are relentless, have been before and will be every day into the future about the cost of living and the failure of this Prime Minister, any opportunity he can have to have a not so passive-aggressive, just outright aggressive crack at the media that he doesn't like, he takes. And he did so today in Question Time. Now, this Prime Minister has a glass jaw. You see, he was trying to make a comment about the Liberal Party, but he couldn't help but try to make a snide remark about me, this program, and I would say, by extension, the people who watch it, like you. Now, Matt Canavan was here last night when we were talking about his view as a man with an economics degree about the conversation around the gender pay gap. Remember, we spoke about the difference between average pay versus median pay, and this is exactly the point that my dear friend and colleague Peter Cridlin made in her program last night, and again, this is one of the best editorials on this subject I've seen.
Median pay of the man and the median pay of women in the company, and any resultant pay gap company by company. So let's use BHP as an example. We get the median pay today for all male BHP employees. Then we get the median pay for all the women. And the difference between the men and the women is BHP's pay gap. Now, it doesn't matter if you're comparing a male senior executive with a female receptionist or a female accountant with a male cleaner. It's not about the job done by the employee and what it pays, but what people are paid by their gender.
Excellent. The very reason why we all lean forward to watch her at 6 o'clock each and every night here on Sky News. But that's exactly the point that Matt Canavan was making on our program last night. But the Prime Minister decided to be a smart-ass about it and this show and Matt Canavan and the fact that it was blokes that were talking about it in Question Time.
I commented yesterday about Senator Canavan's statements. But last night he doubled down. He went on as part of a panel of 4 men discussing the gender pay gap in Paul Murray's man cave. I kid you not. He said this: "It's a whole hill of nonsense. It is a completely useless report."
Now again, for those that are half listening, the panel of 4 blokes, I said at this very show, was going to be used as a way of eye-rolling. But as you know, we don't get people on to only ever talk about one topic. It's lots of people to talk about lots of topics. Am I supposed to ignore the topic of the day? Anyway, what is more important to note is that we are under the Prime Minister's skin because we follow the details. We don't follow the narrative. Take the wider media coverage when it came to the Prime Minister's broken promise and too little, too late on tax cuts. What were the numbers that they used? The ones that were in the press release.
Someone on $90,000, currently looking at $1,125, would instead get closer to $1,400.
On $60,000, an extra $804 to $1,179. $75,000 jumps to $1,554. $100,000 now $2,179.
Someone earning $120,000, it's about $1,800 as it stands now. That would go up to $2,100, $2,200.
But again, the reason why we're under the Prime Minister's skin is because we can spot the BS. We can see the spin. And the reality is that you don't pay tax annually. You pay it every time you get a pay packet. Of course, it's electronic now, but you know what I'm talking about. People get paid weekly, fortnightly or monthly. So it's important to take the big number and divide it by 52 because that's how much money is actually flowing through to people. And as you know by now, the number is not very impressive. It's why I say it's too little, too late. $14 a week is what the median wage earner in the seat of Dunkley will be getting. Otherwise, it's $15, $22, $32 or $41 a week. And even at the $100,000 levels, that's $120 a month. It ain't enough. The polls essentially have gone into a dead cat bounce, and that was confirmed that we've been on the right thing the whole way by calling out the Prime Minister, hence why we are a thorn in his side and gladly so, because I don't think they're up to it, and I think they lie to people, and I think that they use their relationships inside the press gallery with particularly junior or newer reporters to try to get their message out, where it's the older heads who turn around and can call BS because they've been around before. Well, today, our reporter, Adam Walters, was in Brisbane, where he was asking on the behalf of our news team, not our programs team, our news team, about what people's perception was of the tax cuts. And guess what? It's too little too late.
Have you seen the benefit of those?
No, mate, no. Give us a look.
Nothing. I'm not going to get anything. And the cost of living is just disgusting.
Pretty much a smoke screen because we're still feeling the pinch.
Yeah. Maybe, but not very much at all, because they will get you another way. It's a catch.
100%. The Prime Minister is also going to take public shots at us. And again, we lead with our chin, but just this is why we irritate him. Not just because he's able to write it off, as he often does, about the crazy talk that happens here at Sky News in prime time, but because we show you what other people are saying about the data that they try to spin. David Crowe, an ultimate lefty of the press gallery, he said, in relation to the sales job of Too Little Too Late, that Anthony Albanese has been spending hours in radio and television studios trying to build a stronger bond with millions of Australians, only to hear a deafening silence instead of a roar of applause. No doubt the PMO is also pissed off with us because we have been highlighting the great work of Christopher Dorr in a brand new website called The Nightly, where every day this week he has been giving the inside word on big problems inside his office and the brave party people who are willing to say the emperor has no clothes. Here's a couple of examples. I don't think that anybody knows how Albo responds to a decline in popularity and the wheels coming off. That's a Labor MP who said that. Labor colleagues blame hubris and the classic election night folly of victorious opposition leaders. He won. He believes it's all because of him. So because I'm so popular, people love me. Overnight, Australian culture has changed and everyone's become a lefty. Of course, not true. See the Voice results, 60-40. Hell no. He's been cursed with that, and that's why the first half of his term has been so problematic for him. Well, there's even more. In part 2 of the 4-part series, and I'll report on every single one of these because it is fascinating reading. It's the inside story nobody else is saying because everyone else is playing for access. Nobody wants to be cut off by a bloke who can be very petty. Again, read these articles. I'll make sure they're up on our socials. Forgive me, there's a little language here, but we'll bounce around. He needs to get his head out of his backside, not backside as said by a Labor mate. There's a very candid and extremely blunt advice that's being given to the Prime Minister from a Labor mate. Behind the United Public Front, The Nightly has uncovered a barely dominant air of dismay with both Albanese and the Albanistas, which is a left-wing cabal of like-minded sycophantic advisors and MPs who run the government. Who are the hardheads in the party? Who give the good advice? Because half of the Albanese cabal of advisors don't have 2F clues. More. I think he's in quite a lot of trouble, says one government insider. The pool of scare campaigns the coalition can draw on is growing. The first thing is the big mistake of the Voice referendum and hanging so much off that for the first 18 months of power. Voters were worrying about their cost of living and Albo was crying, literally, about something that they weren't interested in. How could he have made such a dumb mistake? And again, to prove the problems that exist, that are not fictions of our imagination, but the reality of people having buyer's remorse, but more importantly, a want to have a crack at this Prime Minister. Somebody again has been leaking from inside the Labor Party, this time to the Herald Sun and to our colleague Andrew Clennell. You see, Labor Party focus groups have been played a version of attack ads that could be launched against the Prime Minister, but these ones are written by the Labor Party about their own leader to check which ones would be most effective. And remember, you can't run an attack ad unless it is based in truth. Anthony Albanese has the wrong priorities. People are being asked if they agree or disagree. He's wasted a year either talking about his Voice referendum or spending time overseas. Airbus Albo, remember? Apparently a complete invention of the media that he doesn't like. If only everyone was obedient as Carl was in the lead up to the election. Oh, you look like Ben Chifley, please. Sorry, John Curtin. While Albanese is doing anything else, your grocery bills are more expensive because, you see, the A1 issue, regardless of what the Canberra bubble inside the bubble wants to talk about or wants to distract from, has always been cost of living. This Prime Minister, who promised in opposition to make things lower under a Labor government, has, of course, seen everything go up and up and up. Something that is also turning up in pollsters that normally give advice to the Teals. Here they are speaking with my mate Laura Jays on her show earlier this week.
Parents who are making such cuts to their grocery bills that they eat their dinners separately from their children because they don't want their children to see them eating baked beans for dinner. Like that sort of stuff, you know, it's a gut punch when you're sitting in a focus group and people talk about that and other things. They've eaten through their debt to pay those bills and get through those big ticket things. They are now cutting back on food and groceries. That's where the hurt is. That is primal for people. And I think that's going to really fuel some volatility.
So take your pick. The left-wing reporters, the opinion polls, the insiders willing to leak about what's going on inside the government, the emperor hath no clothes. That is the reality of Albanese as Prime Minister. And as much as he thinks he has his personal and special connection with Australian voters, even the Labor Party are double-checking what attacks are the most effective against them because, of course, it's true. And again, in terms of too little, too late tax cuts, they passed the Parliament yesterday, which meant the Prime Minister was out on the victory tour. But then he ran into, again, my mate Laura Jays, who hit him right between the eyes.
Let's talk tax cuts because that's what's happening in Parliament right now. For most, it's an extra $15 a week from July. It just doesn't seem like enough, Prime Minister. Are you aware of just how tough people are doing it at the moment?
I am. That's why we've been prepared to act, Laura. If you're a mum and dad working, earning $130,000 a year combined, which is an average which is out there, then instead of getting $1,000, you'll get $2,600, a $1,600 increase in your pocket, which will make a difference.
$1,600 for two people works out as $30 a week, $15 each. That's why it's too little, too late. Again, Laura was right on song today. Well done, darling. Here she was, getting him on $275 and the power bills, and guess what? The TV version was exactly the same as the radio version. He's walking away from it, or he was always lying.
Well, if you earn $45,000 a year, you pay little tax. It's about $4,000 a year. Those same people, Prime Minister, are still waiting for $275 off their power bills. Is that going to happen, yes or no?
Well, what you'll get as well is our energy price relief plan has made a substantial difference, not just to people's bills by lowering them,
but importantly
putting that downward pressure on inflation.
Again, imagine if Tony Abbott said, I'm going to stop the boats, and then 2 years in had done nothing about stopping the boats. How would the media be reacting? You see, the Prime Minister wants to pretend that all of his problems don't exist, that the only people who notice them are the people who've always hated him. But the reality is that all of these problems are of his own making, of the expectations of which he set upon his election, and then pretending that because he's able to go and spin a very large number that, of course, ends up being too little too late, that he can do whatever he wants. That he can spend $450 million on a referendum that Australia didn't want and ended up voting 60-40 no, including in Victoria. This is the bloke who thinks that he can take $40 million of taxpayer money and not give it to Food Bank, where 3.7 million Australians have been reaching out to because they can't put food in the table. No, instead it'll be on taxpayer-funded ads to tell you that $14 a week is the greatest gift you've got since a slot car set as a kid.